Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages. It's Jesse with the Common Nerd, bringing you pop culture and all things nerdy through a common sense lens. And you know, it's one of them situations where, boys and girls, I've been a Doctor Who fan for quite a while. Wow, now that I think about it, it's actually been over a decade that I've been a fan of Doctor Who. And it's one of those things, like, it became like a family tradition for me, right? So it's one of them situations where people, ask why you get so angry, why do you care so much? Why do you have issues with all this bad storytelling, all this writing? Why do you get angry? Why do you yell about these kind of things? It's because this was a family tradition. And it would still be a family tradition to this day that I would have my entire family around and watch this show. My son and I did this for years and years and years. Every Sunday morning when the new episode would come out, we'd watch it, right? And that would be something I would still be doing with all of my 6 kids now if we still had that kind of thing. But needless to say, boys and girls, Doctor Who has become an absolute abomination and a dismal, disastrous dumpster fire since Chris Chibnall took over. And ladies and gentlemen, whether or not you've enjoyed the new storytelling, whether or not you've enjoyed the new direction, and you've enjoyed the massive amount of damage that they've done to the lore and completely and totally erasing the actual first Doctor, William Hartnell, boys and girls, it's one of them situations where literally, you cannot deny the ratings have bankrupted the show. Right, they're absolutely abysmally in the toilet. And obviously, a lot of speculation about the show getting canceled, as to whether or not Disney wants out of the deal, whether or not BBC is going to be able to find a new financier, has all been going on with a lot of crazy speculation. And obviously, we saw the Hail Mary pass from Russell T Davies himself, bringing Billie Piper back to the series. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we've got more insiders coming out there and saying the exact same thing, that Disney is done with Doctor Who. Because according to MovieWeb's headline over here, Doctor Who reportedly fighting for its future as Disney deal fails to regenerate. Yes, boys and girls, the future of Doctor Who is grim, and I'm not going to lie, Movie Ride, that's a really good headline, and I'm probably going to steal part of it for my own title of my video. But needless to say, boys and girls, they've got some information over here, as well as from our dear sweet friend over at Matt McGloin at Cosmic Book News, who is a YouTuber who has a lot of very reliable insiders that have been successful and accurate in the past, as well, of course, Snyder over here, who MovieWeb is talking about. But MovieWeb does not hold anything back. Ladies and gentlemen, they are flat out calling out Doctor Who for the exact abomination that it currently is right now. And you know what? Shout out. That's kind of based. So we're going to share these articles. We're getting all of the juicy details and show exactly what both of these insiders are saying about the future of Doctor Who at Disney, and even in general for that matter. But before we do, if you do enjoy our content, hit that like button, share with all your friends, and subscribe or follow if you have not already, boys and girls, because we are grinding, we are growing. We just crossed 2K. We're sailing our way towards 2,100. We're at like 2016, and I could not do that without every single one of you. Also, leave us a comment in the section down below. Does it surprise you at all? Does it surprise you we're hearing this from even more insiders now? Or do you think it's just a bunch of scoopers out there repeating the exact same information that we had weeks ago? Or do you think the future of Doctor Who will actually be able to find, will BBC be able to find someone else to pick the show up and continue to carry it? Or do you think Disney is actually delusional to continue enough on with this show and everything's going to be just fine? Let us know what you think about all that in the comment section down below. If you'd like to support the channel, please check out the links in the description and think about becoming a member, getting us closer and closer to those 100 members we need to keep the lights on around here indefinitely. So please consider thinking about that down below. All right, from MovieWeb.com and Anthony Lund. Following its unexpected Season 2 conclusion, the future of Doctor Who is once again in much peril as the Doctor finds himself across a regular season of the sci-fi show. After the show was saved by Disney, because BBC was broke and didn't have the money to continue it on, especially after what Chris Chibnall had done to the ratings of the show with all of his extremely bad storytelling and complete and total retcon to all things Doctor Who that had been established for almost 60 years at that point. Yeah, nerd's a little sensitive about it. Who delivered a hefty cash injection that seemed to be spent on mostly unnecessary CGI graphics. The deal, and color of shock there, like, what, you mean they Hollywood people misspent money? Who could have seen that coming? The deal with the House of Mouse is now done, and it doesn't look like they intended to regenerate their investment after the series failed to gain the kinds of success they were expecting. According to a new report from Daniel Richman, Disney is not planning on giving another investment to the show, thus concluding their 2-season contract. This seems to be the reason the second season ended the way it did, and why there has been no Christmas special or no new season announcement, or no new Doctor announced either, because if you'll notice, it just said introducing at the end credits of that Billy Piper, not Billy Piper as the Doctor, as we've seen every other regeneration of the Doctor introduced. So, yeah. How's that Hail Mary gonna work out for you, RTD? Methinks not so well. However, according to Richmond, this does not mean the show is about to be canceled again ahead of the 20th anniversary of its latest revival. Richmond says that the deals are being done to continue the show, and they look hopeful, but it seems like they will not be at Disney. Now, that's what Richmond is saying, right? That it's hopeful that someone will pick this thing up. Who in their right mind would possibly do that without a complete and total overhaul of this show? I have no idea, because this show has its lowest ratings in its 60-year history. Back when this show was not simulcasted all over the planet, back when the United Kingdom had a much lower population than what they do now, the ratings are still worse than they have ever been in the show's 60-year history. Anyone that can do basic math, why on God's green earth would you think picking this show up under its current version would be any kind of good idea in any way, shape, or form? I don't know. Some people really are insane, but most of the people that are really insane don't have a lot of money to invest in something like this, because most of the time you're rich because you're not completely and totally insane. So let's go ahead, before we talk about all of the problems with Doctor Who, besides the ratings that we've obviously extensively talked about as well, let's jump over here for this one, because this is from another insider as well. The latest essentially confirming what this Richmond guy is saying as well. And the latest comes from YouTuber Tachyon Pulse Podcast, who says, according to sources close to the production, that Disney won't be extending the Doctor Who deal, effectively ending its involvement with the series. Pretty much the exact same thing he said. I've been able to... Sorry about that, boys and girls. I've been able to speak exclusively to an insider I've spoken to repeatedly about this, and they have confirmed that the word amongst the crew is that there is no extension to this deal, which means essentially, boys and girls, everybody that's currently working on Doctor Who is out of a job. That includes Russell T Davies. Thank the Lord in heaven for that, because if they don't have anybody else to pick this up right away, you're not going to be back for, you're not going to have any idea when you're going to have another job lined up, right? Which lines up exactly what we heard from The Sun a month ago, that a lot of people involved with the production were extremely worried because essentially management had told them, don't expect to get a call, don't expect another season anytime soon because we don't have anything lined up. This all lines up with exactly what we've been hearing for months. And like I said, why would you? Worst ratings in 60-year history. Worst ratings in 60-year history. The YouTuber adds that if Disney did go through with season 3, that they wanted full control over Doctor Who. He says that Disney not only wanted to pick the new showrunner, as they wanted Davies out following his woke content that tanked the series. We'll get into a little bit more of that here in a little bit. But the Disney also wanted to pick who would be the next Doctor. And honestly, at this point, they couldn't have possibly done any worse than Russell T Davies. Disney were demanding more than just Russell T Davies being fired and getting a new Doctor. They were actually demanding to pick who the new showrunner would be and to pick who the Doctor would be, effectively taking control of Doctor Who. And I mean, honestly, it had to have been better than this, right? Even if Disney's completely and totally creatively bankrupt, maybe they could have found somebody on the outside and brought them in. Hell, maybe they could have offered Moffat enough money to come back because, hey, Russell T Davies has proven what I've said for quite a while. Moffat is the superior showrunner when it comes to Doctor Who. Russell T Davies probably has hired a lot of people who are a lot better and more talented than him. Or Russell T Davies has just gone insane and been possessed by completely and totally by the spirit of the age, and that's why Doctor Who is so bad. What headcanon you want to accept is completely up to you, because we're never going to go to know the truth until we get to ask God Almighty himself. And at that point, are we really even going to care? I don't know. But needless to say, it's one of them situations. The YouTuber further says that Disney also wanted to access the entire library of Doctor Who, which also completely and totally makes sense as well. And it is a weird thing to go somewhere you're watching the new episodes of Doctor Who, but you have to go somewhere else to find all of the old episodes. Fortunately enough, I bought the majority of them on Amazon back when Who was actually good, which if you like back when Who was actually good, join us on Sunday nights at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, where you will join my lovely Sunker Maiden, as well as, of course, my beautiful and very smart Mr. Grant Gregory himself, who is an absolute lore genius when it comes to Doctor Who and gives us all of the most wonderful insights as we're going through and watching these episodes that we haven't seen in a while, or in the case of Sunker, haven't seen at all. So please join us at 7 p.m. on Central Standard Time on Sunday nights for When Who Was Good. You're going to have a good time. I promise. Primarily David Tennant and Matt Smith years, which we absolutely love. I love, but you know, you can't beat Capaldi. Like Capaldi, especially on his own with good writing, just chef's kiss. Which gets the views, but the rights are wrapped up internationally. So yeah, don't know if the BBC is gonna go along with that. But boys and girls, honestly, that's gotta be better than what we have. And like, I think that would just be a glorious thing to see Russell T Davies get fired from Disney, the corporation that had been pushing the spirit of the age and the agenda for decades at this point. Fire the wokest showrunner we have ever seen in the history of Doctor Who, hands down, bar none, doing more destruction and devastation to the fan base and how many people actually show up to watch this show in the ratings than ever before. That would have been absolutely glorious. And I'm sorry. Anybody else, actually, I'm not sorry. Anybody else out there that is dumb enough to pick this show up whole cloth with Davies included, you will get exactly what you deserve. I promise. So back up over to Movie Web here now to carry on for the history of why this has gotten so bad. Doctor Who has come under fire in the last several years, with long-term fans of the show turning against the series' heavy-handed messaging, woke casting, and terrible writing, which the other two things always end up leading to the others, right? When it's heavy-handed messaging and we get woke casting, or those are both red flags. And then what always ends up coming down the pipeline is terrible writing afterwards. That's what happens when you hire people based on immutable characteristics and not actual merit. You get terrible writing. And that's the thing, because if it was just, you know, let's argue the United States is pretty evenly divided on political lines, right? 50-50, right? Let's just argue that. It still technically leans conservative, right? So you would assume that all of those leans conservative people, right, would be anti-woke, right? You could also argue that probably a lot of the middle of the road people would be too. You can argue that based on the election we had, right? But the numbers are so bad for Doctor Who that even the people that agree with Russell T Davies' political agenda and everything the House of Mouse and the BBC had been pushing for a very long time, even if that's the case, if you still end up with terrible writing, they're not going to show up either. The writing, the storytelling has to still be good as well. You can't just inject your messaging and your political bias into things and expect even your own political side to show up if the show is garbage. If not, the ratings wouldn't be as bad as what they are. But this is something that we have seen be repeated in history over and over again. That's why we talk about red flags. That's why we see race swapping and we see gender swapping. We automatically go, whoa, we know where this is going to go. Why? Because Hollywood and Doctor Who especially over the last two iterations we've had with this, with Chris Chibnall, right, who gave us Dr. Karen, right, red flag number one, and then gave us really bad storytelling, right? There was probably some political messaging in that first season, but I didn't really understand it because I'm not from Europe and I'm not involved in Indian and like Pakistani politics. But we knew that with Russell T Davies, not only did we get another woke casting with the very first ever gay doctor, because that's so much fun to talk about, we also got really bad storytelling and damage to the lore, just like we did during Chibnall. That's why all of these things precede each other. That's how we know things are going to be bad beforehand. And sometimes we're pleasantly surprised, but 99.9% of the time, this is the way it goes. Doctor Who has now become another IP that is transforming the show for a new modern audience. You know, that thing that doesn't exist, but apparently alienating existing fans in the process. And that doesn't ever work. Well, things became bad under the tenure of Chris Chibnall and an accomplished enough writer. And hey, he did some good scenes and some good stories when he was under when he was under the thumb and someone else was in charge of him. He's a good writer when someone else is giving him direction. As a showrunner, abysmal. An accomplished enough writer, but a wrong fit for Doctor Who, as the series started focusing on long monologues about real-world issues rather than just having a man in a box flying through space and defeating untold horrors each week. And yes, the man is obviously the other bone of contention, as fans did not take well to the gender swapping of the Doctor of Jodie Whittaker. And hey, I gave that first season a shot. I really did. And outside of the cool little scene of her making her own screwdriver, which is also completely and total canon breaking, I was bored to tears. I didn't care. The episodes were boring. The dialogue sucked. Like, I just didn't care. I don't know enough about your European politics to talk about some of that kind of messaging stuff. But it was just really boring and really stupid, and I didn't care. But I gave it a shot. I gave it a full first season, and then I checked out. Although her role was not made any easier by the writing of her episodes and divisive additions like the timeless child cannon breaker. Thank you. When Ncuti Gatwa took over the role, things seemed to be getting on track again. Hey, I was cautiously optimistic. I thought RTD was coming back. We knew RTD was coming back. We knew Tennant was coming back. We knew Dono was coming back. I was like, ooh, return to form. But of course, Russell T Davies showed us the first red flag we would have known. He flat out said he was not going to retcon any of what Chris Chibnall did. Now me, the stupid, silly, hopelessly optimistic nerd, was like, well, at least he can still be good Doctor Who stories again. Oh, I was such a sweet little innocent child. I always try to be so hopeful. When Ncuti Gatwa took over the role, things seemed to be getting back on track again. But despite David Tennant's return and the bi-generation story, fans seem to be willing to give the show a shot again. No. All you have to do is watch that first episode of David Tennant coming back to know exactly where this was going to go. It was filled with nothing more than agenda, storytelling, and also insulting David Tennant's doctor as well. There's literally a line from Donna and her son, who's pretending to be pretty, going, well, if you were a woman, if you were still a woman, you'd understand. Ah! I literally had to start drinking like a quarter of the way into the show just to be able to get through it. It was that bad. However, online complaints over the show's influx of divisive characters and woke storylines have continued to plague the series, along with the gripes over the recent seasons relying heavily on nostalgia, callbacks, and bringing back characters only a few viewers really remember. Yeah, after all of him going, we're not going to do any of that. We're not going to bring any of the member berries back. Yeah. Literally, this last season was like literally bringing people back from like classic Who. They brought the Ronin back, okay? Bringing back characters only a few viewers really remember, and doing so in ways that make the big reveal seem a bit limp. Now, the latest twist of former companion Billie Piper returning as the latest iteration of the Time Lord, she was not introduced as the Doctor, left everyone hanging as everyone awaits as to whether this twist will actually be resolved. There's been rumors that David Tennant is set to return one more time to both celebrate the anniversary of the show this year and complete the bi-generation story. But whether that is true or indeed possible is something that only time will tell. Well, what do you want to bet it's not going to happen because they're broke and ain't nobody else paying for this. But of course, the one thing that they left out of that article was, of course, the abysmal ratings and how much of a disastrous dumpster fire this thing is. Doctor Who is suffering from the worst ratings in the show's 60-year history, and it's known that the series never makes the Nielsen ratings chart. To boot, Disney has been slashing budgets and reducing output for Disney Plus shows, which included both Marvel and Star Wars. So why wouldn't they cancel this? Why wouldn't they shut all of this down? Why would they continue to pay for this garbage if there's literally no return on investment? Disney is broke. Are they going bankrupt? No, that will probably never happen. But they do not have the money to crank out the amount of content, and it is content, it's not stories, that they've been producing over the last 10 years. And Doctor Who, they canceled a Star Wars show, an IP that they completely and totally control within a month of it coming out because of the fact that its ratings were so abysmal. Why would they treat Doctor Who any different when they only partially own it? It literally makes no sense whatsoever. And as far as anybody else being dumb enough to pick this thing up, Holy cow. If you don't demand the exact same things Disney does to fire Russell T. Davies and essentially take complete and total creative control of this show, you will find yourself in the exact same situation that Disney, the BBC, Russell T. Davies, and Nakuti Gatwa have found themselves in. Out of a job. Because this thing has been an absolute abysmal abomination. You have disrespected canon. You have disrespected lore. You have disrespected what came before. You have disrespected the very first Dr. Hartnell. And then you disrespected Tennant, the one who is arguably responsible for making the show such an international success in its new iteration. And you thought fans were going to be okay with that. You thought fans were going to be okay with this destruction of one of their most beloved IPs and a continuation of crushing their hope after what you gave us by coming back. Russell T. Davies, you are an absolute hack, and the Disney money and all of this agenda-driven seasons 2 of Doctor Who is exactly proven that point. It's all been woke. It's all been spirit of the age, politically driven agenda messaging garbage. They've been pushing the acolytes of the cult have taken over Doctor Who, and Russell T. Davies is one of them. And now, just like everything else we've seen over the past decade, go woke, go broke gets proven true once again. Because when you sacrifice storytelling for your identity politics and your messaging, you will always lose good storytelling. And that is the definition of woke. So Disney Doctor Who, you definitely went woke, and now you're broke. And Russell T. Davies and the rest of the BBC, it'll be an absolute miracle if you can find anyone out there dumb enough to finance this going forward. Because at the end of the day, 2 + 2 still equals 4. God is on his throne in heaven. And at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, the audience decides. And the audience has abandoned Doctor Who.